This is your before and after story. Southeastern College can help you prepare for a secure and fulfilling career in the growing healthcare field. We offer a wide range of careers to choose from, so whether you want to be a medical assistant, medical billing and coding specialist, nurse, surgical technologist, or another healthcare career, we've got you covered. Become a vital part of a healthcare team and make a real difference. Southeastern College, your future is bright. Visit sec.edu to get started.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Butch-Chester. You guys know who I am, and you know what I like to do on my show. Say it with me. I want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self. Now, scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And that's what we want to do today. We want to get you fired up about my guest. I'll be spending time today with James Maiwurm, and we'll be talking about his book, Inheritance of Crises and Dysfunction. So, you know what I'm going to tell you to do. Go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Hello, hello. Thank you so much for joining me here on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
Hello, Dr. Angela. We're glad to be here. Jim Maiwurm.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, before we get started talking about your book, and I cannot wait to hear more about it, we do have a little bit of Southern tradition here, and that is we want to introduce you to perhaps those few folks out there that may be unfamiliar with you and your work. So, first question, tell us a little bit about yourself. What makes you you?
Well, what makes me makes me me. That's a good question. It's a lot of things. It's the opportunity to grow up in the middle of nowhere in the state of Ohio, but to become acquainted with and friends of and people who I really trust in the Midwestern situation that I think is a real benefit to the country as a whole. I'm a lawyer for 30 plus years, practicing in Cleveland, Ohio, and Washington, D.C. for the most part. I'm a fellow who is concerned about the future of our country and the place that we need to play in the role in the world as a country, and not as political parties, but as a country and as citizens who care about the future. And I want to have something to look back on and say, those of us who were in the middle of the political spectrum made a difference at a time when it needed to be made.
Mhm. Oh, I love that. I love that answer. Now, being an author, is that something that you've always wanted to do, or was perhaps this a way for you to share your knowledge, to share your position, your like who you are as a person in today's world?
I would say it was the reason for my doing this is really going into where I am in the sort of my stage of life. Uh, I'm uh, I'm older than I was quite a while ago. That normally happens during life, but I got older in the sense that I started worrying about the future. And when I say the future, I'm not worried about my future because it's my future is what it is at this point. But I worry about my children and my grandchildren who are great people, and I'm sure will grow up to great people. And I worry about their friends and our relatives around the world. And I really want to be doing something that has some lasting value in terms of ability to affect things in a modest way, but yet in a way that stands out for some reason or another. And 5 years ago, I was on the edge of retirement. I wanted to continue to practice law, but it was time to go away from that. And I started doing more thinking about, how can I achieve some of the goals that I just referred to? And I decided to try to write a book. And I had never done that before. And I found out that it's a little more interesting and challenging than I thought it might be. And there was a time during the process of writing the book that I actually gave it up and threw it all in the closet and said, not working that well. This is not something I want to do. But I came back to it with more oomph, you might say, and I'm pleased with the result. And I'm pleased with the result as it applies to the nation and the world where we are today. Because if I had a
Mhm.
chance to stand on a platform and hey, listen to this, because we all need to think about these things. And I'm not here to preach what's right or wrong. I'm here to say we all need to process, and we all need to care, and we all need to be reasonable about achieving reasonable goals in a reasonable way in an unreasonable state of life.
Mhm, mhm. Now, the title of your book, I have interviewed lots of authors that say, "Oh, Dr. Angela, the title just came to me one day out of the blue, and I was able to really write around the title." Others have said, "I called this book 10 different things before we finally settled on the title that is presented to the world." How did the title come to you? What's the story there?
Well, the story there is not too exciting. I've been through several different titles, and I started out with one that was only four words long, which was a benefit in some respects. But I wanted the title to reflect the goals of the book, and which is to try to bring people together as opposed to spread people apart. And
Mhm.
that means financially, politically, religiously, whatever it happens to be. And so that was the goal. And when I looked around the world, you can see that we are really beginning to generate an inheritance of what are indeed crises and what is indeed dysfunction. And so that being some of the goals of the radio or the book or the movie, whatever you happen to be doing in terms of communication, that was sort of a guidance to the title. Now, I know the title is too long. I get it. But, I just have to ask listeners to get over it and say, there's a reason for the title. And it's still pretty applicable in today's world as it was 5 years ago when I started thinking about this.
Mhm.
You should have seen the first couple of verses, though. It was the first couple of versions of the title were not, well, they wouldn't have turned you over too much. That's for sure. So it's better than it was. How's that?
I love it. I love it. And I ask some of these questions because for our aspiring authors, they need to know that they're not the only ones that's, wrestling with a particular issue. Sometimes it's writer's block or it's deciding on which title do you want to, give this work that you've poured into, or, do I self-publish or hold out for the big guys? All of the questions that so many people have. So I appreciate your sharing that story. Now, speaking of questions, I try to ask this of everyone because the children of today are not like the children of past generations. They're dealing with so much more in today's climate. With that being said, would you say that your book is appropriate for someone as young as high school, like 14, 15, 16 years old? Or do they need to be college age or a little bit older to have more life experience to be able to follow along?
Well, that's a very good question. And my answer is that I think you will enhance your understanding of the book and the messages we're trying to give if you have some life experience behind you. And that's true in almost anything we do. I think life experience is something that you have to search for, take advantage of, and really try to develop into a plus as opposed to a minus in life. And I think that's true in this case. And I personally feel very strongly that this book is appropriate for a high schooler or anybody older than that. And I think the interpretation of the book and the things that you take away from the book or the things that you put into the book in terms of reading it and thinking about the issues that we try to address, those are all things that are going to be enhanced by
Mhm.
a life experience. And I think what I really wanted to do is people to think about the messages that are in the book. And I don't really care whether we all understand them as long as we're thinking about them and trying to do the best we can to generate interest in doing what's right as opposed to what's wrong. And so I think it's a book that can serve lots of different generations, and probably different generations will have different reactions to it. You know, people in my
Mhm.
generation would have a different reaction to it than my father's generation, for example.
Mhm.
And so I think having different reactions born of different ages and different life experiences is not a bad thing. And, you know, all of us probably have a book or two that well, maybe not all of us, but a lot of us have a book or two that we sort of like to read once in a while. And what I'm hoping is that this book will become something that people take off the shelf if they're going to their book club and they want to have something to talk about, or if they want to compare the results of a movie, or if they want to think about what's going on politically. You know, is there something to be gained by using this as a discussion guide as opposed to something that's going to create uproar? I'm not interested in uproar. I'm interested in positive, sensitive uproar about things that we can do something about. And I think all of us can do something about almost anything.
You are so right there. And many times when we can have that intergenerational conversation about things that are going on in the world, it helps each generation understand the perspective of the other, and makes for a really great bonding experience. So you are definitely right there. Well, it is time for us to take a very short break. But before we do, we know that, of course, this book is available on Amazon or wherever books are sold. But if someone wants to reach out to you, what is the best way to do that?
The best way is probably by email, and the email address for the book is on the back of the back cover.
Alrighty then, you guys, you know where to get a copy of the book. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Butchchester. I love that your book is one that is going to cause people to ponder, to consider, to reevaluate. I like a good book that captures the reader's attention and that you can really sink your teeth into. With that being said, I want to ask, it has political overtone with your book. Why was it important for this to be a conversation for now?
Well, that's a deep question that has a lot of layers, layers to it. I I think fundamentally one of the problems we got in the country right now is that people spend more time talking and screaming at each other than they do trying to come up with solutions. And you can look, for example, in today's news, you could look at what's happening to the Congress being wrapped up tight about the budget and related issues, which are very, very deep, hard to solve, and have lots of different zones in them in terms of quality and depth and enhancement of lots of different things. And so I wanted to have a book that helps people to the extent they wanted to sort through the layers. You know, people talk about things having a lot of layers to them. Well, the topics dealt with in this book have a lot of layers to them. And it's not a typical kind of book, I don't think, because it's actually designed to give you some background. And it's not deep, deep background. I mean, this is not a 500-page book with 100,000 footnotes. It's designed to be a book that's readable. You know, think short sentences, for example. You want to pay attention to that sort of thing. So I wanted to be an easy read and a read that you wouldn't be afraid of, but a read that you might be able to sit down at night and with your favorite soft drink or otherwise, and think about the things that are going on today and what do you think about them and what should you be doing with yourself or your family or your friends or your enemies for that matter to make a change for the positive, however you define that. Because I think we're in a point in our history in the United States where we're really trying to preserve the democracy that is so important to us. You know,
Mhm.
a year and a half ago, I thought a little bit about, you know, is this country going to survive as a democracy? And then I thought to myself, that's the craziest thing anybody ever started to worry about, because if any country is going to survive as a republic or as a democracy, it's going to be this country. Well, guess what? I don't think it's so far-fetched as I did a year and a half ago. There is a lot of noise out there that is not good noise. And we need to think about being serious about what we have and how we got there and the types of structures and phenomena that come in and help us develop answers as opposed to solutions that don't go anywhere. And so
Mhm.
I really felt strongly that the book needed to inspire. I don't mean that in a religious sense, but in a sense of creating ideas and an answer for oneself about how
Hmm.
wants to lead life, what's important, what's not important, and what can we do to make things just a little bit better. And each of us making a little difference can make things better. And I'll give you an example out of the political world, which is a little bit slightly zonkers, but it's worthwhile. In the presidential election that Mr. Trump won the first time, I remember watching him during the debates, and he is a very deft person dealing with other people and audiences. And he has he's got a quick mind, and that's all to his benefit.
Mhm.
But he's a hard guy to stay up with because he's so quick. And quick doesn't mean smart, and it doesn't mean dumb. It just means quick. And
Hmm.
I think what we want to do is have people like that around to question what we're doing, but we also need to notice what's going on among those who are doing the questioning. And so I think this is a difficult world to live in. I just think understanding where people are coming from,
Mhm.
where are people coming from, that inevitably makes a significant impact on how they think, what they think is important. So if you look at a person and you hear a view that you either agree or disagree with, and you think about it, chances are, and this is true of me, chances are they're going to be affected by where they came from, how they grew up, where they went to school, and how they
Mhm.
developed over time, job-wise, religion-wise, is all over in all kinds of factors that affect one's life. And so I think, the book tries to
Mhm.
say, here's a bunch of stuff that you can think about. And I think that's one of the reasons why I think this high school student is fine for this book, because we're not preaching a result. We're preaching a process that tries to take
Hmm.
advantage of each person's worldly experience and try to weave it into a pattern that makes sense for that person over time. And to go back to the example, for example, I still remember in that presidential election, after it was over, there was an attempt to change the votes in Georgia, and it was after the fact. And the claim was that there were problems with the voting processes in Georgia. And I can still remember then President-elect Trump saying on a telephone call with Georgia officials, saying, "Gents, all I need is 11,000 votes. How can you get me 11,000 votes?" Well, I'll guarantee you that there are 11,000 votes who would change their vote differently than if they were voting now as opposed to then. And it wouldn't have taken much to change minds back then. And you can say that's due to a lot of different reasons. But the fact that you could change a national election result with a margin of 11,000 votes is, it's nuts, but it's the way it is.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Now, let me ask you this. Do you think that because you have a law background, that you are able to process the information, not only that comes to you in day-to-day conversation, but that you are able to present it in this book in a way that is easy for someone to follow the storyline because you have that background?
I think it's a benefit. I don't know that it's not a panacea, because the types of legal and constitutional law issues that we're dealing with now on a daily, I mean, literally a daily basis, are tough issues, and there are issues that some of which have had lots of ground plowed under them and over them and others are new and haven't been exposed to the plow of the law. But I
Mhm.
think it's helpful. But we're dealing with tough issues, and they are tough issues because they are people issues as opposed
Yeah.
to law issues. And people issues and law issues collide every once in a while, and you have to be careful when that collision takes place, because collisions is not what we want. We want gentle breezes flowing through our lives, aiming in the right direction. And so I think it makes a difference. It helps. It does. As I say, I wouldn't claim, and most people who study constitutional law wouldn't claim that we have all the answers, but we
Yeah.
do understand some of the questions a little bit better, maybe.
Yeah. I like that answer. Now, in your book, I believe I have this correctly. The main character is Salt Pepper. Tell me, why was this character, given this personality, why are they important to this book?
I wanted to have a character in the book that had a name that was more troublesome than mine. How's that? Maiwurm is not the most famous name in the world, but but it is a growth experience having that name. I would say I wanted him to be, Salt Pepper is ordinary man or woman, right? He's a lawyer. He worked in D.C.
Mhm.
He was an experienced practitioner. He no doubt was a good lawyer. People trusted him because they trusted not only his legal experience but his judgment. And
Mhm.
finding people with judgment that you care about is a hard thing sometimes. And so I think salt pepper stands for, salt and pepper. But we went to Stanton, Virginia, for example, which is Staunton in some places, and we picked up the salt from there. And if your first name is Salt, it's only natural. What else was your lick name going to be? So Pepper was automatic. So it's not like there was a thunder clash and said this person is Salt and this person is also Pepper. But it does suggest that there are different strengths and weaknesses among all of us, and not all of us see the same things at the same time. And so salt pepper is she's sort of a general process. Think of him as a picture of the average American trying to deal with things as best he or she can.
I love it. I love it. And as a native Virginian, hello, hello to all of our beautiful and wonderful listeners coming in from the Commonwealth of Virginia. I love it. I love it. So when we look at the nuggets that you have placed along the way in the book, I firmly believe that authors have a way of giving us these beautiful breadcrumbs, these beautiful nuggets that keep us turning the pages from first until last. If there is one particular thing that you want the reader to take away from having read the book, what would that takeaway be?
I want to attack your question in one sense. I want to give you two things, okay, instead of just one.
Mhm.
One is I want people to take away the importance of coming together, being together, coming toward the middle of the world in terms of political and other kinds of things. So going toward the middle and something that is a little more faint in terms of the dash and the trouble that things can be creating around ideas. And then I guess the second one, this is a harder one to articulate. I think what we want to do is have a recognition that, like it or not, things are going to get worse before they get better in the types of things that we're talking about. Now, you don't have to
Mhm.
like that. And I'm not going to run a petition around the world saying, are you optimistic or not? But things are not going to get better unless we make them better. And so, I would
Mhm.
say, get on your horse, do the appropriate thing that's consistent with what your goals are in life, and get
Mhm.
after it and get over it, because I think we're headed for bad times. I think what's going on right now in this country, and I don't care what your perspective is, I really don't. What I really care about is, do you care about something, and do you care about something enough to try to make a difference? And if you can
Yeah.
think about making a difference in your own little venue, your own little set of ideas, or they're probably not so little. And so let's try to join together and build on things as opposed to take them apart. And if you want to see what taking apart looks like, just watch your news tonight on the latest debates in Congress. Ugh. So anyway, that's the point. That's the point. I'll leave it there. I could go on for a long time, but we lose half your audience, and that's probably not what we want to do.
No, but I thank you for being open and honest. And with everything that you hit the nail on the head with every conversation, with every perspective, every topic in the world today, there are going to be just as many people nodding their head in agreement with you that perhaps there are with people shaking their heads that disagree with you. But if we can find that common ground in the highest common good for all, then what a great place to meet in the middle. I love it. I love it. Now, my last question for you is, and I realize that so many of my authors have, things outside of their book that they are doing. There's future projects that they're working on, things that they are ready to discuss, not the things you're not ready to discuss, but I do want to give you a platform. Are there any new things in the work for you? Any projects that you're working on? Anything that you hope to present to us in the near future?
Well, I guess one goal I've got is to remain vertical.
Agreed.
Uh, at my age, you have to worry about that. So I have one of my goals is to stay vertical. And I guess the other thing is I want to spend as much valuable time as I can. I'm a lousy father and a lousy grandfather, and I get moved away from some of those things that are important by some of the things that are not important. And so if I could be a better dad and a better grandfather and a better community member, that would be a good result. But you have to think about it, and then more important, you have to act on it. So
Yeah.
that would be my speech to myself would be get out there more often, but get it out with people who you really care about. And I've got a great family, and I'm probably the luckiest person on this radio show. And what I need to do is take advantage of the all the blessings that I have in terms of the people who are around me on a day-to-day basis.
I love it. I love it. A great book to read and a nugget of wisdom to spark us for the rest of the day. James, thank you so much for spending some time with me here on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I have enjoyed my conversation with you today.
Thank you, and I've enjoyed it as well.
Listeners, we hope that you have enjoyed your time with us today here as well. I hope that we have enlightened, inspired, and empowered you again today. As always, may the Lord continue to shine his face upon you. May you receive his blessings and his mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Bye bye.